Clear to engage. Time on target. 5 mics. Out.
So Reagan's not here, but he'll be here, but he's doing daddy duty, so he's rocking his kids to sleep. Do you remember those days, Cyrus, of like rocking your kids to sleep and stuff? Like those are some of the best. Sometimes I'd rock myself to sleep with them.
Yeah, boy, I do. It doesn't feel that long ago. And of all the kids, the youngest seems to grow up the fastest. But
Yeah. How old's your
uh,
youngest now?
and we have nine altogether, and so my youngest is 17, but my wife's youngest is 9.
Dang.
Yeah,
9 kids?
we have 9.
So,
Yeah, five, five. She has 4.
or four step kids. Well, you are the Brady. You're bigger than the Brady Bunch.
I know. We need an Alice now. If we could.
Good reference. Yeah, that was a quick pickup. I think
Yeah.
that I always wanted more kids, and Vicky always was like, "You met me too late in life. Too bad."
Uh,
She's like, "I'm not having kids after 35," and so we had our second. She was 33 or 34, and and I'm not a little guy, and she's kind of a little girl. And so our babies are like 9 and 9.5 pounds. So she had C-sections on both. And she was like, I'm not doing it again. Like I'm just not. And
well, you know what? Two's a good number. I mean, that's you can
of
do a
course,
lot, with two. And
we thought that too, and I was okay with it because I said, we have a foursome. If you have a
you
third,
do,
kind of like, what, the one has to stay home, like what.
but a third is a basketball team.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
Mm.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefit. Of course, I wasn't creating basketball players. Both my boys aren't exactly
Mm.
super tall, so they
Mm.
got mom's genes. It didn't help out.
Mm. That's okay.
Thanks for Reagan will join as soon as he gets a chance. Thanks for hopping on with us, Representative Javadi. Been and this is I've been through, I don't know, 9 or 10 special sessions. And of course, this one isn't over because of now we punted the Senate to the 17th of September.
I
Uh,
heard.
as a date certain, I don't know now. I'm not sure now if Senator Gorsuch, if he can't make the date certain, what happens there. I think with date certain, I think they technically have to do business, right? Or do no business, right? Or sine die. I believe that I'll have to check that, but if Reagan was here, he would know. But so anyways, we're punting everything 2 weeks. The good part is all the legislators get per diem every time they go in and gavel in with their pro forma. So that means every 3 days now, the Senate and the House, not the members, just the presiding officer, basically has to show up, gavel in, and say, "I'll see you in 3 more days," and then
Yeah.
they go away because that those rules stand, which is kind of interesting. What's your thoughts on the Senate side? Not we'll go back to the House side a little bit, but what's your thought on like this process where it stands now? And like, do you think we're going to get this done? Like, what's your prognosis? You think he's coming in? What do you think happens?
Good question. I don't think they would have moved things through the House if they didn't think they had the votes in the Senate. So if it's all hanging on whether or not Senator Gorsuch feels well enough to come in, then if he makes it, I think it passes.
Yeah, yeah, I get the sense too. I mean, they must think, and I'm with you because they didn't have the votes in the House for 2025. That's why they wouldn't move the bill at the end of session last time, is because they knew they didn't have, well, they weren't sure they had the votes in the House, and they definitely knew they didn't have the votes in the Senate at the time, because that was kind of some wild times. I mean, the amount of negotiating that was happening that final day of session and long session was pretty intense because everybody was trying to find their angle. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't remember. I mean, I wasn't part of the whatever negotiations were happening. And I know I think it was hanging on the Senate. I think they needed a single vote more on the Senate. They didn't have Senator Meeks vote at that point. They needed to find a Republican to give them the votes to get it through, and when they were unable to either reach negotiations but get that Republican, or find a Republican that just loved the way things were, that was it. That was the death knell for 2025. So I think that's changed, with the we're not looking at the same package
Yeah.
that we were in 2025, or House Bill 2025. And so, the taxes, gas tax is lower. It's not tied to CPI. This has the weight mile tax modifications into it, which is it's good. And so, yeah, I think that things have changed. And now, my understanding is that they have all the Senate votes they need on the Democrat side, and they likely don't need any Republican votes. And that would be an interesting twist, though, if Gorsuch can't come back. Senator Gorsuch's not there, and they need to find a Republican. I think that really amps up the pressure for the governor, for the Senate president, and the leadership on that side to try to find who that's going to be, if they can even find one. And if they can't, I mean, people are going to get laid off. We're going to find, we're going to see if there's going to be the political will for another whack at it, with a new special session when they have the votes.
Well, the governor, did you think that was interesting that the governor went ahead and punted the layoffs until October 15th? I was a little upset at that because I thought there was this, quote unquote quasi drop dead date of September 30th, and then yet she just said, "Oh, well, we can punt it out to October 15th." I guess because if it does pass, they can do reconciliation, so that would have I guess that's the legal ability for her to go back, and she could deficit spend, right? And then reconciliation would allow them then to pick up the 2 weeks or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's a good thought. I'm not sure. Um, because I think there's a few like really short term levers she can pull to buy a few days. And that must be what she's up, looking at doing. But longer term, she doesn't have those same levers. So if she's found a way to like maybe get another 30 days out of this to make sure, assuming that the bill's going to pass, then it must be the reconciliation, maybe the e-board to bring over a little bit of money. I'm not sure what the pathway is for her, but clearly she's got a plan.
Yeah.
I think basically the way it works is, and I don't know about ODOT's internal spending and how they do their controls, but the agency gets and can spend their 2 years. They're supposed to use it over the full 2 years, but like you said, they're sort of deficit spending into future months. And that's why they said they set up the layoffs for sooner rather than later, because if you wait until later and you keep paying people longer than you really have money to pay them, you actually have to lay off more people and eliminate more positions. And so I think the idea is if they're extending it by 30 days from September 15th to October 15th, the hope is that they do get enough revenue or have enough remaining or hold enough positions vacant that they can afford to keep everybody for this extra 30 days. But I know that the governor's office did tell legislators that the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets to do the layoffs, because they were accused of being political about the layoffs, and that was their responses. It's not political, it's budget. Okay. You can sort of look at that. And what your point is, Brian, is it's like, oh, so they can just continue to kick the can down the road, and they can for a while. They have the ability to do that. Now, this kind of proves that we could all met during legislative days instead of an extra 2 weeks in the middle of August. I mean, shoot, this session's going to get delayed so long, it'll just take us into legislative days, basically.
Good.
So I think that there's some logistics there. But what I heard was that Democrats leaders got approached, checked in with their members, and this is when they wanted to meet. And that's interesting because that's not what I heard from every member and every Democrat, but that might have been true at the time. But it's hard for me to understand why the legislative days was on the calendar and then we're just meeting in a special session and, messing up the interim, when the last time we had a special session last year, we just waited until legislative days and we did it like the day before and then did the rest of legislative days.
Yep. I'm not sure. I haven't heard any of the rumors on why, but I was curious. Why did we need to meet on Labor Day weekend? And you might have nailed it. It may just been somebody behind the scenes that it worked out for the most, the members to be there, but they would have all been there for legislative days. And maybe she didn't want to, basically do some deficit spending.
Were you asked, Representative, if you could be there over Labor Day? Were you asked at all if you were?
No, I don't think I was asked directly. I think I just telegraphed I was going to be there. Once I heard that it could be Labor Day, that we had a special session at the end of the month.
Telegraph?
Yeah, I just said, all right, I'll be there. So I don't think anyone had to reach out. I was in town. So.
Oh, okay. Because it wasn't, I don't know. I'm just kind of curious because they didn't ask. They didn't ask my boss. I don't think they asked Vicky if she was going to. Now they started asking her if she was going to be there for quorum. That I know they started asking. But of course, like you said before, they thought that, they knew they had enough votes, or they thought they had enough votes, right, in the Senate. They thought they had enough votes. Did you know that Anessa Hartman was a no? Did that factor into your decision making on any level?
No, I wasn't fishing. I wanted to keep it as apolitical as possible for me, meaning that, wondering whether they needed my vote or not. I really, just wanted to find if it was a good policy. Bad policy, I wasn't going to vote no matter what. I wasn't going to vote yes. Good policy, or at least a good fix for the winter and for maintenance and all the things. I was going to be yes regardless. So I think I found out kind of what the vote count was. I'd probably say Sunday-ish, the day before. I don't. I think maybe Sunday night when we went in after the hearings, and there was the chatter about what we thought the vote count was. But
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Anessa told me she was going to be a no, and not for political reasons, 'cause she just didn't think it was the right policy, and so. But I still didn't feel any pressure ramping up. I mean, I think they knew they were going to need a Republican, and I'd already, I liked the policy. So,
Yeah, so walk me through that then, if you can. So, because she says, as a Democrat, she says, I don't like the policy. Her floor speech was driven more by cost, I think, constituent concerns with the rising costs and stuff. But you talked about how she didn't like the policy, and then you vote yes because you say you like the policy. What, I mean, was there, I don't know how to really ask this, but I'm wondering how, like between the two of you, was there something universal where she liked it and you liked it and she didn't like it? Or what part of the policies do you like? Maybe we'll just ask that because we don't know what she liked or disliked, right? We don't have that on record. So maybe we can have her on and ask her. But what about the transportation policy did you like?
oh, good. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, when I start with it from like a district first perspective,
Okay.
and
Yes.
that's probably the biggest common denominator between the two of us is that she's in a different district. She's closer to I-5. I'm on the coast, and
Mm.
so for me, I mean, having lived here a long time, I know what we're going to. Everybody knows what to expect in the winter. We know we're going to have torrential downpours. We're going to get 70, 80-mile-an-hour winds on a regular basis as it blows in off the ocean. And what that means every year is rock slides that completely block Highway 101, Highway 6, Highway 26, the major arteries that get us in and out of the valley, but also connect us together. We have, I mean, if you, from my house all the way up to just the north part of the county, there are 15 plus bridges that span rivers. And every year those bridges, there's an issue with one of them. Last year we had one that blew out completely,
Yeah.
closing an entire section of road for I think a week. And during that week, EMS there was a way around, but it added an extra 90 minutes to the route. So we know that this is all going to happen. And then we only have so many maintenance people, and it's like they're trying to put out fires all over the place. In this case, rock slides, trees falling out down onto the road. If we have snow, which we get occasionally, that's all over the place. So just even before I even thought about where the money was, whether we had it in separate buckets we could move around, or whether we had to raise the tax, it was a real understanding that we always need maintenance during the winter months. There's not ever going to be a winter where, even if the roads were perfect, and all repaired and all the bridges were brand new, we would still need maintenance to keep our roads clear. So that's where I started. I think Anessa, when we look at that, and a lot of other legislators, they probably never have road closures unless it's like snowmageddon or something like that. So they're thinking, well, and honestly, when there is a plow, when plows are needed, they pull from every rural county possible to make sure I-5 and 205 and 217 and the metro area part of 26 and 30 are plowed. So they'll pull Astoria's crew all the way in. Astoria won't get plowed, but I-5 will get plowed because it's it's top tier highways. And so for me, that wasn't really like well, we can play chicken with the winter, and we'll see. Maybe this time we won't have any rock slides. So that's where I started with it, knowing that we needed the money, and then it became a really pressing issue to find out where was the money going to come from. Did we have money in reserves that the governor just didn't want to touch for political reasons, or did we not have that at all? And that's where I branched. And so when I determined that even if we moved as much money as we could around, which I think is good governance, prioritize certain things, deprioritize others, make sure the money's there. Once I determined that that money wasn't there for that, then it became, well, then let's do it, and then let's explore the gas tax, the EV tax, the registration. The registration fees are important. I get it. I mean, they're a big part of the package, but most of that goes to funding the DMV, right? To me, that was a small. I don't love seeing those fees grow. I get the DMV has been getting by on less for a while, but I was really looking at those dollars getting to the ones that would actually make sure the roads stayed clear. So that was, I think, the biggest thing. That's why I could say, this was critical for our area, and not just in a kind of a nice way to have a road clear. The south part of Highway 101 between me and Pacific City, a lot of people make that commute to get into Tillamook, which is the grocery store for the area or the hospital. And that'll get blocked every year. It'll be blocked for a day sometimes, and that's with full staffing. If we have a snowstorm or an ice storm, we might be closed down for 3 or 4 days while we wait for the crews to get out there and get everything clear. That's a real loss for businesses, not and for community members.
Yeah.
They're not getting to their doctor's appointments, and I'm not getting employees into the office, and neither are the other businesses. And so we're losing thousands of dollars a day as a business, yet we still have to make payroll, still pay our bills. The bank doesn't give me a 4-day delay in my loan payment because of a snowstorm. So yeah, right. So you have these real economic factors that you're trying to manage, and it's like, really, we can't afford to have the road closed as long as they are now. And if we've now cut the crews in half, closed stations, it's not going to be 24 hours while we wait for the rock slide to get cleared. It's going to be 48 hours, 72 hours a week, or longer. And that wasn't possible. So for me, either the money had to be in the buckets or there had to be a tax.
Yeah. Well, the coastal road issue is something I know going into the long session when we knew there was going to be an infrastructure package, at least on the table, right? And we all knew that. And I remember, Anderson and I we had a long conversation about, because you go 101. I don't care when you go 101, whether you start at Astoria or you start down in Brookings, right? 101 has challenges all
Yeah,
the time.
constantly.
And everybody drives to the beach in Oregon.
Mhm.
And other districts don't have, Reagan's district in Lebanon, the entire country doesn't go to Lebanon.
They go to Sweet Home for the Jamboree, and that's not happening anymore. I think this is the last year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see, there you go. So that's like one weekend a year. But if you think about the coast, like the amount of traffic and pounding that we put on the coastal roads, getting to the coast and then getting up and down the coast is truly intense. I mean, that's where I think sometimes the TLT funding and some of the other things that you've talked about, trying to shift those buckets of money around
Yeah.
to give, like if Tillamook had more money from TLT funding to work on their roads, right? Maybe they're able to pick up if there's a rock slide or there's something happen. Well, maybe they have more capacity to go out there and help fix some of that maintenance in some of those roads. And
Absolutely.
But
Yeah, because that formula that we used, even to get the gas tax back to here, really still disadvantages us. Because, like you said,
yeah,
we'll get millions of Portland, Oregonians and people from around the country that'll come out, not in the space of a year, in the space of 3 months.
yeah,
And they will hammer those roads with RVs, and then we have our normal commerce traffic happening, and they're buying gas. That's true, but part of that formula is it flows back to our counties based on how many people have registered their vehicles here.
yeah,
So we have 40,000 residents in Tillamook County. Not all of them are driving cars. A little bit more up in Clatsop County. So we're like funding. We're funding we're making our roads and everything else available, and not just maintaining them, but actually building them with state highway funds. We're making a little bit go a very, very long way, and I don't think people get that, and I don't blame them for not getting that because they don't live here and they don't see it. But when you live here and see it, and we're thankful for the economic activity, but again, even the money that is that we generate from economic activity outside of the transient lodging tax goes straight back to Salem, where it gets
Right.
redistributed across the state. It doesn't really flow back into us. And we just cut natural resource production with the Habitat Conservation Plan. And I think it's a little ironic that when I tried to push for the transient lodging tax fix, which was actually just moving money from one bucket to another,
yeah.
the Republican, my team, at that specific fix was like, oh no, we can't do that. We're not going to move that money around. Well, it's like, I mean, come on, we're trying to do all the things with good governance, and the coast is getting hammered,
So,
constantly hammered.
and I think you highlight a really important point, which is that there's the way Republicans would govern the majority, and then there's the option we're presented in the minority, which is very, very, those are two totally different things, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times the Republican, especially in like the leadership office, our job is to put forward the like, here's what Republicans would do if we were in charge, right? Here's what we would do if we had all the controls. Now, of course, in Oregon, we have almost zero controls. We have the ability to deny quorum that has had limited effect, and requires significant coordination and buy-in from all your members, which we don't always have, right? So then your secondary option is working on a compromise, right? And I think that that's always the hardest part. And I think with the compromise, I guess one of the questions that I think will come up a lot kind of as we move forward is, do you think that the governor and ODOT actually made a good faith effort to do reductions to help reduce how big this gas tax and registration fee hike was going to be? There's pieces of this I like too. I like that we're forcing EVs to pay more. The liberals in Portland are really upset about that. They think that we're overcharging them, but if we've undercharged them for 10 or 20 years, we can overcharge them for a bit. Ask the truckers how they feel about that, right? So you've got that.
The
The payroll
truckers is a big
tax,
thing. That was a huge
the truckers is a huge thing.
yes.
That's a huge piece of this. That's a huge fix. That is going to affect a lot of
They've been waiting decades for that fix.
decades, right? And frankly, I think the only thing that actually forced that on the table was them having to eventually file a lawsuit against the legislature and the governor for not actually doing their constitutional duty, which shockingly happens all the time. We have a lot of trouble getting them to follow the Constitution.
That would have been a big bill. I mean, they would have been awarded, I'm sure,
Yeah.
millions of dollars
Yes.
in back
So
pay.
So I guess the first question is, do you think the governor and the ODOT actually did the work they needed to do to get efficiencies, or do you think they need to go back and do more?
Good question for the governor. But I would say that, I think they looked at it, they thought, what's practical, what's possible? How do we do this and still have a functioning transportation network? How do we meet our obligations to bondholders? What are the opportunity costs if we sweep money out of certain accounts over into maintenance? Because when you look at, for example, the 45 million that's sitting in the matching funds account that unlocks, basically $500 million in matching funds. Normally when we get federal dollars, it has to go to the interstates, 205, et cetera. But we have this one opportunity to take 45 million bucks and bring in $500 million that gets used on all of our state highway projects that we need. And if we don't have that money, no one's bridges are getting fixed. No one's roads are getting fixed. Now, instead of it taking 900 years to replace every bridge in Oregon, it's going to take 90,000 years.
Yeah.
And who knows if we'll still even be on the planet in 90,000 years. So, I mean, we were playing with some numbers, with some math that had some real consequences. And the truth was, when I looked at it, and did the governor do enough? I don't know. Will she have to do more? I think so, because I think there really are some inefficiencies and some ways to make the agency better. It's never going to be perfect. Who are we kidding, right? No one's ever going to write, "Oh my gosh, I went to Oregon. ODOT, their transportation agency was the best I've ever seen. I mean, I will go back and visit Oregon just to tour their facility." I mean, that is not the goal.
No.
But
Yeah.
what we want is, if we need a permit, let's get the permit, on a timely basis, so that people aren't waiting around forever to get their projects going. Let's make sure the roads are clean, and let's make sure that and maintained. Let's make sure that the projects are happening. We have a road in Tillamook that the state needed to fix. It took 10 years because just of how we've decided that project money moves through. So, did the governor make enough cuts? I'm not sure. Does she need to make more decisions on how to make the agency more efficient? Absolutely, because, and you guys know this, um, this gas tax, if it passes, buys us enough time to get through a couple of years, maybe a second biennium. But
Right.
we're never
This
going to
is a
hold.
Band-Aid.
This is a band-aid. We're never going to hold the costs down. Inflation is going to keep pushing labor, asphalt, steel, concrete through the roof or up. Even if it grows at 4% within 10 years, if it's only growing at 4%, the purchasing power of the dollar of the 6 cents that we put in will set us back almost one third. We will be able to buy one third less with a dollar in 10 years. And so they're going to have to come back and spend more money or make more cuts, because we have to have money not only for maintenance set aside to invest in those projects, because I don't think there are many more bridges in Oregon that are going to survive another 10 years without significant investments. So yeah, she's
Now,
got to do more.
the other thing I think that a lot of people are asking questions about it, I'd kind of like to get your take on, is you were, and maybe I'm misremembering this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that in some social media, either posts or comments, you were not super on board with the Republican plan, which was to not raise taxes, either give ODOT the ability or redirect revenues. Which was also, I think, I would characterize as a Band-Aid fix. That's not a long-term solution, but the goal was not to raise taxes, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Walk us through how you looked at that and comparing it, knowing that proposal was not likely to pass, but also knowing that's what most of your fellow caucus members are carrying forward, right? Or at least a good chunk of those ideas.
Yeah, that's always tough when the caucus wants to get behind an idea like no new taxes, which, guys, I'm for. I mean, I don't want any unnecessary taxes. This tax is a little different in my book because it's a use tax, right? You're paying for the use of the roads, etc. And so I didn't feel like it was, just some tax that we were gonna like the income tax, which you take, it goes to Salem, you don't know what it's going to get spent on. It gets spent on a million different things. This, if you pay,
Right.
if you're driving and using gasoline, it's because you drove on a road to get to someplace to do it. So I didn't want to be at odds with the caucus, but I really wanted to understand, was that a legitimate option? Because and what I mean by that is, if the caucus's proposal, which I think was really well thought out. I mean, my hat's off to Shelley, Rip Bossert Davis, Leader Drazen, and the Elmer, and anyone else that worked on that. They really, and on the Senate side too, Bruce Starr and Weber and others, they really looked to see, where are the non-mission critical things and can we move them? And in the end, I thought the opportunity costs and the actual real costs of doing that were just too high. And what I mean by that is, you had money in the capital projects bucket that potentially was, and not all of it was unobligated, but some of it was. About 150 million of that was unobligated dollars. You could have moved that over, right? So now we're 150 out of the hole. We have 250 to go. When you looked at the other buckets, the next group of buckets, I would put like DEI in there and CPP and some of the other non-mission critical functions of ODOT. The initial thought was, let's just grab all of it, but you couldn't. There were too many rules, even rules that we couldn't unwind because of federal rules layered on top of that, to pull all of that money out. So maybe we could get 100 million, maybe a little more, maybe a little less out of that bucket. That put us at 250 million. And that still left us short. And and so then where was the rest of the money going to come from? And the Republicans said, well, let's move the stiff funds. Let's take the red tape. Let's take all the restrictions off those dollars, and let's use those. That's 500 million. Now that definitely got us out of the hole. The problem was, especially, and even in my district, in many districts, the community, members of the community depend on the public transportation dollars, right? So gutting that wasn't really a practical solution for the most vulnerable in our communities. And so I kind of pushed that one back aside and said, all right, we can't touch stiff funds. We're still about 50 million short if it's a $300 million hole. If it's a $400 million hole, we're 150 million short. Where were we going to get the money? And so, and that also means that we gutted the capital projects account, not the I-5 Rose Quarter. That's, a lot of that's been paid for. Not I-205. That the bond dollars have already been, we've already got those. We can't break those contracts. There's a giant chunk of change we can't get out of that. But the 150 million that we maybe could, like I said earlier, the $45 million that was set aside to fix bridges and roads that would unlock $500 million to help make those affordable for the state, that would be gone, which means no bridges, no new roads. Our road down in Pacific City that fell into the ocean last year, that's not going to get fixed. Highway 6 that's sliding off into the abyss, that's not going to be able to get fixed. The bridge that almost fell completely apart up Highway 101 on the way up to Clatsop County, that's not going to get fixed. Neither would any of the other projects in the state because that money would be gone. So what did that leave? That left 80 million in unobligated dollars that could be used for projects that didn't have matching funds, but we would have swept that over too. That means we couldn't have also fixed. We would have lost even more projects, not the big ones. And then the last little bit was this 35 million in local exchange. And that's money that ODOT, the cities like Tillamook or Lebanon, they can spend money on roads and unlock federal dollars, but it's complicated. And if you're Tillamook and you got one engineer and one grant writer, like there's too much. You can't do it. And so ODOT says, we'll trade you some money. You give us the money that you have for those roads. We'll give you some money that has less red tape on it. We'll use those restricted funds because we know how to unlock and use those dollars and play by the rules. So all that money would have been gone. That means no capital projects for 2 years, possibly 4. And I just didn't think that was good governance. Like we weren't going to get there. And so I felt like, okay, so we need to backfill that. And the only way we were going to get this money was a mix of a gas tax, which granted I didn't love, but we needed a new source of revenue because there wasn't enough there. And so the 6 cents did a couple of things. One, it immediately filled the maintenance hole. So that we didn't have to lay off anybody and so that we had enough money to actually do operations through the next 2 winters. The second thing it did is it left money in the capital projects account so we could actually repair the roads that have been broken now for years. Not all of them, but the ones that are on the list. And so that meant people in case the worst happened, another road collapsed, we'd have some money for it. But the other part of it was we will have ongoing transportation needs, and the only way we're going to pay for them is with bond dollars, right? So we have to borrow the money to even build those projects. There is no extra money to get more bond dollars. Just like if you were going to go buy a house, you have to have money set aside to pay the mortgage. We don't have any extra dollars to pay any more mortgages, which means no more big projects, and that's just not tenable for a state the size of Oregon with infrastructure that's failing because it hasn't been fixed in 50 years, some of it or longer. So we have all
another
of
question. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Another question I have to ask you about is there's going to be people that are going to go out there and have already gone out there online saying, "Oh, we're just waiting to find out what Javadi got for his vote." And so, did you get anything for the vote?
Like a jet plane?
Nothing. You know what? Senator Betsy Johnson's going to beat me up for this, but I got nothing.
Yeah.
And I know that that's how kind of deals work, or that people think deals work, is that you're going to, you get a little quid pro quo, but I didn't go to the governor and say, hey, I'll vote yes if you give me this. I did say to the government, I'm like, look, if I vote for this, I expect that we'll see some changes, right? That we're not gonna see ourselves in the same traffic jams. That we're gonna fix some of these projects that have just been sidelined. Like let's do the things and no layoffs. But I mean, there's lots of things I could have asked for. I could have asked for 50 million for Highway 6. I could
Yeah.
have asked
Why
for,
not?
yeah, I know, right? I could have
Well, and I
asked
think
for
then on the
a
flip
lot of
side,
stuff.
some people are going to ask you, could you have asked for higher accountability? Was there something on the accountability side that isn't in this bill that you wanted? Or you could go out there and say, hey, look, I was the last vote for this. My next on the line here a little bit. The governor better fire the ODOT director and send a message that we are actually going to make some changes. I mean, there's options for you there. And so I'm just kind of curious if you're thinking about exercising or pulling the trigger on some of those to change the signal that's being sent. Because right now, a lot of the signal that I think, especially from the Republican side of it, which is the side that I usually start on, is it's like, okay, he voted for the tax. He didn't sell out for anything. That's good. He also didn't make the bill what he wanted it to be, I guess, right? And so there's the two sides of that argument. Obviously, those are
Well,
you can't have both of those, but
yeah, I mean, a lot of times, yes, I had those conversations. I asked for stuff to be in the bill. There was some serious interest in some of that stuff, but I mean, I'm one dude, and I couldn't control certain aspects of like quorum.
right.
So I had to get, I mean, honestly, the Republican leadership had to ultimately be the one that decided what the deal was going to be on a lot of
Mm.
that. And so I think where we got a sunset, where we got some concessions on the weight mile tax as far as whether or not they can lower the rates or raise the rates. I mean, that was all part of some of those negotiations, last minute discussions. There were other things I asked for to be in there. I actually wanted to make the payroll tax optional so that a county who was at didn't have to go up to point two. It could stay at point one, or it could just drop out completely. And there was a lot of interest in that. I think we'll see that come back in the short session, giving counties the flexibility. The reason why we didn't get that one was mainly just a timing issue. Like it was going to take 3 days to write up that concept. But more than that, it was very difficult in a short window of time to and kind of estimate what the fiscal impact and what the revenue impact would be because it's hard to predict who's going to drop in and who's not, or drop out and who's not going to drop out. But there was a commitment to come back to that in the short session to work on that. And then, the other thing, it gets me, if I'm still around, right? If I get reelected, I think I've bought some political credibility and capital there that I can use going forward to
With
be at the
who?
table to
Who'd
discuss.
you buy that from? Who'd you buy the
Yeah.
political capital from?
No, hopefully my Democratic friends, right, who ultimately control the agenda and who gets to be invited into those meetings. So,
Yeah.
But the ultimate compromise you're saying is not something you dictated. It was dictated by sort of the Republican leader acting on behalf of the whole. Is that kind of what I'm
yeah,
understanding to
yeah,
supply the quorum?
yeah, exactly. You've got all those little dynamics, and not only that, you have to also convince the people on the Democratic side that it's still good policy. Your change is still something they would support about the whole policy, and so those little pieces of making sure whatever you put together has the possibility of even passing. And so I did. I mean, the fact that I was even having those discussions and that they were listening to them, and I think got us to where we were. I'm not taking credit for it because I think there was more than just me as part of those negotiations, but
I,
it did help.
I would say a couple things that I think that are truths. This bill, 1,000 times better than 2025 at the end of session. That's a
Sure.
truth. I mean, both in my mind aren't good bills, but this is a way less bad bill than 2025 was. There's a lot of things that I think you said that we fixed in there. The truckers were made whole and some of the other things. I mean, truckers should just go to a straight diesel tax and just be part of the
They should.
nationwide grid and just be
Yeah.
done with it, right? I mean, it's just
Well,
stupid. I think what you said about the long-term problems with ODOT, like I was reading today this morning, Texas spends 100 billion a year on roads and transportation. A year.
Crazy.
And for 3 years in a row, they've been spending 100 billion a
Yeah.
year.
That's
And so our road system is completely broken in Oregon. I agree with you wholeheartedly that way. Oregonians don't necessarily see it to be, I think there's pockets, right? There's pockets of the coast. There's, probably Abernathy Bridge. There's a few other things that we could see of that are really, but as a whole, our roads aren't horrible. If you live in Wilsonville, you probably don't agree. Trying to go up and down I-5 right there. Like we need more bridges. Like you talk about crossing, like repairing bridges. I think we just need more bridges too. Like we need more
true.
roads
Yeah.
capacity. And that was probably my biggest problem with this bill is I believe that it was very narrow sighted. It didn't really take a look at a 10-year, horizon on how do we, because Republicans like commerce. We like moving stuff from point A to point B. We like cars. We like
Yeah.
trucks. We like, especially in Eastern
Yeah.
Oregon. I mean, we love our trucks out here. We disproportionately pay way more taxes than anybody else. So do
Yeah.
you on the coast because you drive into the valley for, to go have a doctor's appointment because there's no doctors, right? So, or specialists and those sort of things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess my biggest problem with this bill was giving into the governor's way of like, not even the governor. It's like SEIU and their way of just basically bullying everybody into voting yes to save some jobs. When I think we would have found a way to maintain the roads. We would have found a way. The split on our gas tax is not good for the maintenance project split. That stuff still didn't get worked on. I understand that sometimes you got to kick the can down the road. I think part of this is you getting to be the poster child of the one that voted yes. So, like a lot of that is just the politics of social media, right? So I get all that. You seem to be doubling down on it. Um, and
Yeah.
I think you kind of enjoy it on some level, like taking the argument to the people. I think you enjoy that because I think you want people to understand where you're coming from. And I think you did a good job of laying that out, to be honest. As at least to me, it seemed like you came to a rational decision. Whether people agree with that or not is up to them to decide. But I think that you came at it from a very rational, because you didn't take anything. You didn't like, it wasn't a political buyout or anything. And you live in a tough district. Like at the end of the day, Tillamook to Astoria, is a tough district. So I agree that those are tough decisions to make because you do want the roads and you have crumbling roads. Like literally they're actually crumbling.
Yeah.
So I get all that. I wish you the best. I think it's going to be a tough road for you to
Oh,
haul over the course of whatever this recall. I don't know if they'll get the signatures. I don't even know if there's any sort of credibility. But that had nothing to do with even this text, but which is kind of hilarious. That had to do with Senate Bill 1098, I believe, right? I think that's what that.
1098, HR3. They were upset that I had not they wanted me to telegraph in advance how I was going to vote on 2025. But honestly, I was not there at the end of the session on 2025. I
Yeah.
didn't fully understand all the ins and outs of that, and so I didn't know what to tell them because I hadn't made up my mind yet.
Well, the one
But
thing
you're
I've always appreciated about you is you are a man who I think you're very thoughtful. I think you're very smart. I think you think through policy and from a different lens than I think some versus a tribalism lens or what have you. Now, granted, most of us in the Republican Party believe less government, no taxes, but we have to tax something, right? You have to pay for something. So,
even Ronald Reagan raised the gas tax in 1982, I think, a nickel, which in 1982 dollars would have been, I mean, in 20 for $25, what's that? Would be at least 10 cents. I mean, that was a massive increase because he saw that the roads needed the infrastructure. I mean, it's not out of the norm for Republicans to, when they're governing like he was, to say, well, we got to make the investment. I'm sorry, there's no other way.
yeah, I've read a lot of like Salt Lake City's got an incredible plan where the business community was invited to be part of it. They're paying for this awesome, crazy scenario with transportation. And I just feel, well, I mean, politically, obviously I'm on the side of the Democrats and stuff like that. And I run campaigns, so it's hard for me to be in that space. But I just feel like we just need this longevity look, and maybe this is the rallying cry to finding a long-term solution to transportation. And I think that roads are a great way, whether you're driving a gas car or electric car, they're a great way to get around. They're the easiest way to get around. I think our people would be better served by Uber, but
Oh, Uber is so expensive though. It's like $40 a trip sometimes now to
it
go,
costs more than that to do those medical transports and stuff. Like,
well,
I'd really
that's true,
like to
but
see the math on it. So,
I want to say, you're absolutely right, Brian. Like this is not. Here's where I was. Like I initially, when I looked at this problem, I thought, oh my gosh, like we need so much more infrastructure than this bill is even able to provide, and that's kind of where 2025 was heading with tying the gas tax to CPI and
yeah,
some other stuff to say long term, we're going to have to figure out how to fund this. Now, ultimately, I got to a point where I said, well, if we tie it to CPI, they don't need to come back to us for anything. And if they don't need to come back for us, we have lost our leverage with the agency to make sure they're meeting benchmarks and stuff like that.
yeah,
But what we have done is put some money back in the pot to buy us some time. But honestly, and you've nailed it, it's not enough to deal with the rest of what ODOT and the transportation network is going to demand in the next 10 years. We have to come back in 26 and 27 and start eating away or chipping away at this problem. Because if we
yeah.
don't, we're going to be right back where we were in 2 years or 4 years. And one thing I wanted to touch on, because you mentioned Texas. I mean, Texas makes a killing because they sell so much oil and refine so much oil to the rest of the United States. And when people say to me, "Hey, our gas is the most expensive in the country," I mean, almost California's right up is ahead of us. But when you look at like a state like Utah or North Carolina's tax today, gas tax, is exactly what ours is, 40 cents a gallon. Now, their gas prices are about $1.20 per gallon cheaper. How can you have the same gas tax and have a gasoline price, not the agency? Forget about that for a second. Just the price you pay at the pump is $1.20 cheaper, but then and same in Utah. Now, when you look at and the reason is because the gas tax is not driving the cost of fuel. When you look at Washington and Oregon, Washington's gas tax is what, 14 to 15 cents higher, I think, per gallon, but yet our gas prices are almost identical at the pumps. And the reason is because it's a distribution network issue. We cannot get crude oil to the Pacific Northwest without shipping it the most expensive way possible, either by train from Montana, but by and large, the largest amount comes on barge through the ocean to Washington, where it gets refined and then piped down to us. Then we put it on trucks that pay the most expensive weight and miles tax system
Yeah.
in the nation to get it to our gas station. So by the time we pay for it at the pump, it is a full $1.20 more, and on the coast, even more because we have to drive it all the way out here on cruddy roads. So, if we really want to fix the price of gasoline, which I think everybody would love to be paying $1.20 a gallon cheaper, it's going to take massive resources to either drill our own oil, which I don't think there's the political will or even the natural resource to do, and second, refine our own oil and gas, which we're not going to do either. And so we're kind of, I hate to say it, we're kind of screwed on the price of gas, and it's not because the gas tax is driving the price of fuel. It's just that's a fiction that maybe sells good campaign slogans, but at the end of the day, the reason why we rely so heavily on the gas tax and not Utah, North Carolina, they have a sales tax. Texas does too, that goes into funding infrastructure. We don't, and the thing about a sales tax, it's tied to the price of goods, which are naturally increasing with inflation. Ours doesn't. We don't have a sales tax. It's the gas tax, and that's it. And that doesn't climb with inflation, which, like I said at the beginning of my screed right here, we don't really want, because we want to be able to tell ODOT, nah, you're not getting more money unless we see this, or justify why you need it. Why do you need more money than we gave you last time? And this time it was simply because inflation, inflation, inflation. It's just gotten too expensive for the agency to
Yes.
keep up.
With Texas and their ability, and we can kind of wrap it up. I'm sure you got to get going. I appreciate all the time you gave, but that was one of the things. So remember LNG? They were trying to bring in the natural
Yeah, I
gas
remember
through
that.
Coos
Yeah.
Bay. Well, the Democrats and our governor shut that down, and they would have been paying hundreds of millions of dollars into the state coffers to help pay for stuff like roads and infrastructure and things like this. So our state has gotten so business unfriendly,
Yeah.
all based on we want to be on a pedestal or whatever, and we don't want to have liquid natural gas going through our ports because even though they're going through our ports and then out to the rest of the country, but they've gotten so holier than thou that we're giving up opportunity to glean money off of somebody willing to pay it to have access to markets. And I agree with your assessment on the price of gas, and that's why it's costly. I agree with that all, but we're not doing the things necessary as a state to help drive those costs down. We're standing in the way of those. We're impeding those because certain people politically hate cars. Like they think we should all drive around in little buggies and ride a bus everywhere.
And I'll live in a little city. No,
Yeah,
you're right. We are busy. I mean, we need to fix that because those are that's where the debate should have been and should be going forward. How can we get other resources to come
yeah.
to bear to offset the costs that we keep putting on the backs of Oregonians for infrastructure? We are now super dependent on energy from outside of the state, and the cost of renewable energy. While it's a good goal to have as much renewable green energy as possible as part of our grid, it's also expensive energy, and so we need those debates. That's where we should be spending our energy and our time.
I think
Good
so. I
point.
agree with you on that. I just think and I think that frustration, I think everybody feels that frustration. Republicans have that frustration deep in our soul about our state that we just feel like these people that move here from Chicago or the Midwest and are Democrats and then run for office and become governor and other office holders. I don't know how many Democrats were actually born in Oregon. There's not a lot of them. But I think that's really so a lot of that frustration kind of boils over. And I think sometimes then the arrows kind of get pointed at somebody. Now, whether it's you today and it's going to be another Republican tomorrow, but I do think we're probably having the wrong conversation. We should be talking more about because if we had more businesses and we had more employers and we had more taxes, then we wouldn't ask to being out here trying to find another 6 cents, right, to throw at the problem. So
I would be in a better spot. Yep. Good
all right.
points.
Well,
All
thank
right.
you for your time. And Reagan had to go. The baby was crying in the background, so he had to bounce off.
He's
So,
just here and awake now, so I'm just gonna let him be awake. But I did want to say I think that even if we don't agree or Republicans don't agree with you, I also understand where you're at because I worked in a leadership office where and worked for a senator that made some deals, and some of those deals were perceived as politically brilliant, and some of them were not. And only time's really going to tell whether or not it's a good deal. It's always hard to tell. You just have to take what's in front of you sometimes and go, well, I've got three guys that sit, in front of me in this chamber that are ready to sell out for less than this. So I'm going to go ahead and take it. Right. And that's always the calculus you never understand. You never know where the next 36th vote is going to cost. Right. And so that's always the balance and the challenge of this from a leadership perspective, from the swing seat perspective. So I did want to bring that to it because I totally understand the challenging position that you're going to be in and that you were already in before any of those votes were teed up and you even saw language. So
it's true. No, you're right. I mean, it really does come back to kind of where we are in the district and what we needed. And I get why other members, are in their communities and they're like, well, we don't really feel like we need the resources, or it feels like we saw that we can kick down the can down the road on and have a broader discussion. I just couldn't have. That's not a reality for the North Coast. That doesn't factor in. I'm not going to play chicken with Mother Nature for the next 2 years. We have real needs here, and so for me, it was in the end a combination of that and the math and the facts of the situation. So thanks for inviting me, guys. It was good to talk.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. That was interesting, huh? What was your take on it?
Oh, I mean, I think it'll be easy. A lot of people will tell us we weren't hard enough on him. The Facebook warriors will be plenty hard on him. His Republican primary voters will be hard on him. So those arguments are there. But I do think one of the things that he did here that you don't always get out of social media, you see the sound bites or you read his Substack or whatever. he's like going point by point here. And a lot of his points were right. Like, if you want to say we don't want to enter federal matching dollars and we don't want to do any more projects for 2 years, that's a valid opinion, but there is a cost to that. And rebuilding or recapitalizing that fund, restarting or doing new projects, those all do take time. All that process takes time. So like, I found a lot of those arguments compelling. I do think ultimately that the governor and that ODOT, and this is one of the things I think you and I and a lot of Republicans find frustrating about these agencies, is they say, well, since we can't fund the whole problem with efficiencies, we're just not going to get any at all. And there was the talking point on the floor from Gomberg about how many positions we eliminated, and we say $50 million, and look, we've done our job. And it's like, no, we haven't done our job, because this is still a super dysfunctional agency. On top of that, you have people, same Gomberg and others, saying, well, if we just had any good accountability ideas, I'm sure we'd be able to put them in this bill. And you heard him, you heard Javadi say, actually, a bunch of those got thrown in there. And the reason is because they're not politically viable with the left, because they still run the building. And I hate that argument. I get so irritated by that argument, because it's like, those ideas are there. You guys just don't want to do them, whatever the reason is. I think that the governor who has not said if she's going to fire the director of ODOT while giving the power. If she doesn't, then she has accountability and is unwilling to use it. And that's ultimately going to come back on her. And so she's going to have to make a decision if this bill ever gets passed and she gets the chance to sign it. Am I going to fire the ODOT director, or am I going to continue to go with business as usual? Because right now she's going with the unions, who are politically her key constituency. If she doesn't make them happy, she doesn't get reelected. She gets primaried, and she's a one-term governor. So you have that calculation to make. But beyond that, now that she's pacified them, is she going to do the job of governing, or is she going to be okay with mediocre to bad performance? And that's a question she has to answer. What's she willing to do? How many votes is it going to cost her? Does it impact her reelection, or does she care about the good governance? And I think that's going to be that remains to be seen.
Yeah, those are good points. I just, and I agree with a lot of things that he said there. Like there was a lot of like the stiff stuff. I mean, the stiff payments that they were going to try to, do them opt in and stuff. The problem with that, with the transit stuff is if we put too many restrictions on transit, then all of a sudden they lose the left side of the party. It's like, you're almost on this teeter-totter, right? And so the left side
Correct.
loves transit. And I mean, Pham almost voted no, Senator Pham did, on that in that committee, because she got pissed that there was a sunset clause on the payroll tax, right? So there's this weird like pendulum, and I don't believe there was enough good faith with the DNR leadership to find a little stronger compromise. Now, if there was ever going to be a stronger compromise that was going to get more Republicans to vote yes, I doubt it, right? I mean,
I agree.
Most Republicans aren't voting yes for a gas tax regardless. Like, it could have every accountability provision that we wanted to stick in the stupid bill, and I bet you still only maybe you get one more. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, but they're also making that same calculus that you just talked about as the political calculus, right?
Yep.
And they're saying at the end of the day, like, is this one more provision enough for me to take the heat that I'm going to take the heat on to vote yes on this bill? And if there were any Senate Republicans that were thinking about voting yes after seeing the heat Javadi's getting, none are voting yes.
Right. And I think that that's great too, because now it is going to force the Democrats to carry it 100% on their own. It's delayed the bill another 2 weeks. You might see a new offer emerge sooner.
Yeah.
Now you'd have to bring the House back, right? But I mean, there's the potential for something to happen in all this time while we're just sitting around twiddling our thumbs. I mean, you were talking about the governor's press release about, I've gotten assurances from, Senate leadership that we're going to be okay on this bill, that it's guaranteed passage. I'm like, they don't know crap. So like, I mean, this whole special session has been a pretty much logistics nightmare disaster. And it's based on, I think, a lot of faulty assumptions by Democrat leadership. And so she's going to take their word for it. And she may get burned by doing that. We don't know for sure, because this thing is very volatile, and you don't know what happens. I mean, sure, Chris Gorsuch comes back from the hospital and somebody else goes in. I mean, these guys aren't all spring chickens in the Senate. And so now you might have a problem, or Republicans decide, hey, maybe if we can get enough people to deny quorum for 3 days after Gorsuch comes back, we can get additional concessions. I mean, so many things can happen with this. And so the governor's going out there. I would, if I were the governor, I would be exploring a different bill right now that actually has support of both sides of the aisle just to see where I could get.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that in 2 weeks is a long time to sit around and think about stuff, right? I mean, that
It's
gives
a
you a lot of
long time.
it gives you a lot of time to kind of, oh,
Hey,
maybe if we ask for this or if we get that, and
you know what you can do in like a week, Brian? You can do a poll. And I bet you there's some people thinking about maybe I'll just do a quick poll and see how this goes. Maybe Mark Meek does a poll and decides he's a no all of a sudden, or he needs something
yeah,
else. I mean, you never know what can happen. This is a
maybe we
long
do a
time in
poll for
politics.
Mark Meek
Yeah, let's get
or
it. Everyone,
Patterson.
text us. Me and Brian will crowdfund a poll to show Mark Meek that he should flip to no, so that we can make Senate Democrats' lives difficult for an extra 2 weeks. Let's do
Well,
it.
and he held up, this is my only, and that's why it'd be great to talk to Anessa. And I think we ferreted it out in this conversation was kind of like, did he get a deal? Did he get any concessions that were kind of his or anything in there? Because if you knew you were like he said, well, I let Republican leadership and stuff, and I can say with experience, that Cyrus has been pretty good about letting other people do negotiating, of course. But if you knew you were the 40th vote or the 36th vote, right? You knew you were the one. You knew Anessa was a no, a flat out no. The power that you wield inside that building, and I don't know what Mark Mead got, but I guarantee that he was satisfied. So whatever came with that satisfaction was definitely worthwhile. We heard that Representative Ruiz and Munoz were potential no's, and then they both voted yes. They were bugging about the ag overtime stuff. I've heard there's something that happened there with some concessions that so when you're using your political, and it's not like quid pro quo, I don't like that term. I think it's like you're using your political opportunity to push forth some policy that you want to see changed, right? And I think there's nothing wrong with utilizing your vote. I think it's expected that you should utilize your vote because that's the only real power we have, to utilize our vote to try to push some political will more into the way that you see the world on a specific issue. And I think that will be interesting to watch how this goes through, but I think we probably could have, maybe there was something else there. I don't know. But I think Republicans could create a little bit more opportunity coming up with 2 weeks to sit around and think about what sort of opportunities they could come up with.
Well, and there's two ways to do it. Again, there's one guy going and say, I'll be your 18th vote, and here's what I want for, or there's the whole group standing together saying, hey, you guys, and we've done both ways. We're denying quorum until you give us what we want, right? And so there's
Yeah.
always that balance there. And I think the key is, if you're sending that one vote, it better be trusted. It better be somebody you can rely on. If you're sending the leader to negotiate, they better be good at negotiating. And I think that, sometimes is the problem is, if the Republican leaders in the past haven't been up to negotiating, then they don't, or they negotiate bad deals, right? I mean, you see bad deals happen
Oh yeah.
too. So that's one thing you have to be wary of. You have to be good at this negotiation game. You have to know how far you can go before you lose them, and you have to know that you didn't leave anything on the table, and that's tough.
Redistricting bad deal. Anybody? Bueller. I think also the one thing I will say though is I believe that part of Javadi's issues is that I think the Republicans collectively, right, from all of the social stuff in Oregonians, like I think the Republicans on both Senate and House did a good job of elevating this special session when Democrats were trying to sweep it underneath the Labor Day rug. I think Republicans did a good job of elevating this whole deal a lot bigger than what would have happened, I think, otherwise. And so Republicans should give themselves a pat on the back. I think, Javadi's feeling the brunt, I believe, of the added exposure of how much, this gas tax, and people don't like gas taxes. So I think there's a little bit of that compounding effect that kind of happens. So Republicans do a great job of making sure Oregonians are aware. And then Javadi votes yes and takes the big brunt of voting yes as a Republican. So and also even his own colleagues are out there kind of bashing him a little bit, and I think that's unfortunate because I think you can politically disagree with him and you can disagree with his take on stuff and all those sort of things, but I don't know how well it does to just bash him or to say that he's wrong. I think having a good strong discourse like we just did in a conversation, but of course we weren't. I'm sure we weren't hard enough. I wanted him to speak more, so I didn't interrupt him much, and neither did you. Because I
Yeah,
really wanted to give him that opportunity. Because I listened to the Lars thing yesterday. I downloaded Lars. I don't really listen to Lars.
yeah.
I like
I don't
Lars, but I
listen to
feel like
Lars at all. I find
it's
him
a
to be a bit of a moron, but
yeah, and he's just a broken record, right? So, and when you have to do regular radio and 8 minute things, you spend 2 minutes talking about what you're going to talk about. You spend 2 minutes talking about it, and then you spend another 6 minutes talking about what you just talked about, right? And then you go to break, and then it's just repeat, repeat, repeat. And I find that kind of annoying. But Javadi went on there, and which I don't think would have been a good move for him. But I mean, he's not afraid to step into the lion's den. You got to give him a little bit of credit there. So. Yeah, for whatever that's worth. But anyways, you get
well,
back to taking care of your kids. Sorry, go ahead.
no. And the last thing I'll say is, if you're going to go online and you're going to criticize one of your own caucus members, I think you're also opening yourself up for that to happen to you when you're wrong. And we're all going to be wrong at some point. And so I'm going to, if I'm going to go out here and podcast about why I'm wrong, I should be prepared for other people to come out and podcast about why I was wrong at some point in the future. So I think,
Yeah.
and that always gets back to, it's like, oh, the Republican leaders aren't conservative enough. They're defending their liberal member. It's like, no, they have to defend all their members because that's their job. And all the members kind of need to participate in that team effort if you're going to build a team. And if there's not a team, that makes you kind of generally weaker in your legislative capacity as well. So those are things you just have to be thoughtful about if you're going to engage in that kind of stuff.
It's kind of like, if you go out and we bash, I mean, collectively, we, meaning like Oregonians or even Americans, we bash government officials for taking, funded trips to, I don't know, Vietnam or Europe or whatever to go look at something for a policy thing or whatever. And we'll bash them during campaigns and, oh, look at them. They're taking these junkets and they're traveling overseas and doing all that sort of stuff. So, if you take it and you go, you have to realize the calculus is that some people will think that you're on the take. DBS went to what? The Philippines? Not the Philippines. We went to Taiwan one time, and then now he's in the pocket of the Chinese Communist Party, right? So you have to take the good with the bad when you do certain things, and I believe that that's really the reality of it. And to your point, if you're going to bash, yeah, just remember. Yeah.
Watch a video or a PowerPoint. Don't go on the boondoggles. That's my official advice. I'll
I
send you an
agree
invoice.
too. Don't and whoever and those and I've been on a few of those little things like where you go do the tour, even if it's in state, and I've done them with other politicians, and let's go tour this or that. They're really not that fun. Like it's not very enjoyable. Like you go look at stuff that you really don't give two shits about. You spend time in a conference room in a foreign country. Like it's not a lot of fun. I don't know. I mean, the only one that I mean, even like take when we went down to the border, right, which was all paid for by our own political action money. No state dollars. Nobody
That
else
was
paid
fun.
for it.
I had fun.
Everybody paid their own way, but everybody paid their own way, right? And then we also added in some things because you and I, when we put that together, we're like, well, we don't want to just go stare at a piece of ground that looks like the border fence. Like, so we got some meetings together with some Arizona legislators. Like like we tried to make it a little bit more exciting and fun, and then also not on taxpayer dollars, or any other or no business paid for us or whatever. So I think that was kind of part of it, but I don't
Well,
know.
and the last part about that one, sorry, I know you're trying to have the
Yeah.
last word, Brian, and I keep trying to steal it from you. We went to the border, and then Trump got elected president, and then he mostly fixed the border problem, which sort of negated a lot of the political value for us to go to the border. If Biden was still in office or Harris had won, then we would have a lot more to talk about
Yeah.
and more policy and politics to do with the border. But the unfortunate thing happened was the issue got fixed. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
for us politically, good for America. Good for we're blowing up the drug trade now. Great, I think that's awesome. But we can't use the issue now because they're solving it. So, that's
Isn't
that's
that
what you get for electing Republicans, I guess. Solve problems.
isn't that video awesome of Trump that released that where President Trump just blew up 13 of the or 11 of the
Yeah,
MS-13 guys on a boat?
he's got Democrats now. They're so anti-Trump, they have to go defend the drug trade. And
It's
you guys need
crazy.
to stop taking the bait. I don't get it. That is the number one rule. Stop taking this bait. He's baiting them, and they're taking it.
Every time they take it, every time. JB Pritzker and the Chicago guy come out, and we don't need that here in Chicago. So then this weekend, 50 shootings over the weekend. Like, it's just crazy. Like, oh, he's just a masterpiece. So you have the last word, Reagan. I'll let you. I guess that's it.
There you go, Brian.
You wouldn't do it. All right. Hey, have a great one. And more to come on this transportation package. Sadly, we are not over it and done with it yet.
Left and right, but we're gonna do this thing tonight. Oh, yeah. Time to make a move. Can't afford to lose. Got the votes to prove what we're gonna do. We're dancing back and forth on the Senate floor. La, 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 yeah. Moving bills through an open door. Round and round until we score. This is what we came here for. Dancing on the Senate floor. Representatives and senators meet, trading words to find the perfect beat. Committee hearings all day long, till we finally sing the same song. Oh, yeah. Amendments flying high, watch them pass on by. Gotta give and try, make this bill fly. We're dancing back and forth on the Senate floor. La, 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 yeah, yeah. Moving bills through an open door. Round and round until we score. This is what we came here for. Dancing on the Senate floor. When the votes align, and the count is right. Feel that Oregon pride, as we pass it tonight. We're dancing.